Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I would like to take some time to talk about conditions in Pathfinder 2e and why I absolutely love how they're implemented. The gist of my points in this video is that conditions are super easy to learn and figure out, while also being pretty easy to apply. Plus, conditions in Pathfinder 2e are so impactful for combats, and that combined with the other factors just makes them amazing. Let's just get into it. First, I really do need to take some time to talk about why the way that conditions are designed makes them so good. Really, conditions are a wonderful little bit of modular game design, and modular game design is part of the reason why Pathfinder 2e is so good. Effectively, the best part about conditions in 2e is how almost any spell or feat in the whole game can then reference them, and only a few specific spells will inflict unique conditions that you have to learn just for those spells. Effectively, if you learn what Frightened is due to the Demoralized action, you don't need to relearn an entirely new system just for the Fear spell or Phantasmal Killer. All of these different spells can reference the same condition, and you only have to learn a piece of information once. If you know what Drained is, you don't have to relearn that again for something else. If you compare this to Pathfinder 1e, where the differences between level drain, ability drain, and ability damage are incredibly important, it makes conditions so much easier to grasp. Just that accessibility is incredibly important because they're just in this wonderful design spot where they're incredibly approachable and widely applicable, which is honestly an impressive feat of game design. Another important part of what exactly makes conditions so good is how easily accessible they are when you're actually playing the game. In other systems, you kind of need to be a specialized character to apply conditions consistently, but basically any character can debuff enemies in 2e. If you have Intimidate, you can demoralize an enemy if you share a language with them. If you have Deception, you can try and feint and make the target flat-footed. If you have Athletics, you can always just try and trip or grapple a target to give your allies an advantage. All of these actions that I just mentioned are absolutely possible in other systems, but really, to make them work, you often need to specialize your character around those actions. In 2e, basically anyone can do them, which makes conditions so much easier to apply. And plus, I'm just going to point this out here, that tripping and grappling people is an amazing way to help out your ranged party members and your spellcasters, because they can't exactly flank all of the time. While conditions are certainly much easier to apply, it's also important to think about how good conditions actually are, since if they are available but not very good, then conditions aren't very good. But the good news is that conditions are generally incredibly powerful in almost every situation. Just demoralizing an opponent can increase your odds of hitting them greatly, and if you combine that with the target being flat-footed, then that has a huge effect on the fight. Because remember, increasing your odds of hitting is also increasing your odds of critically hitting, which is one of the best parts about 2e. Honestly, just thinking about conditions and how your character can make use of them is one of my biggest suggestions to parties who want to get a better grasp of the system and maybe be a little bit more effective in combat. I've said this multiple times on this channel, but a -1 or -2 is actually incredibly meaningful in this system, and conditions are one of the, if not the easiest ways to apply those modifiers. Overall, I think that conditions in Pathfinder 2e are a happy medium between how conditions are handled in Pathfinder 1e and D&D 5e. Pathfinder 1e has an absurd amount of conditions and spell effects and all of this nonsense, and that's kind of hard to learn, but 5e kind of is in the opposite direction, where many of the status effects ultimately just give advantage or disadvantage. So you apply them to try and ensure that you have advantage on your rolls and the enemy has disadvantage on their rolls. I admittedly don't have all that much play experience with D&D 5e, and especially not past low levels, so that may not be entirely true, but I feel like it's generally true, and it's one of the big reasons why I haven't tried to go out of my way to play 5e all that much. And as for Pathfinder 1e, while I do love it to bits, conditions can get to be an absolute nightmare once you start applying like 10 of them onto a single character sheet, even if you have the most common ones memorized. 2e has managed to find a way to implement conditions in a way that I really love. I highly recommend checking them out and considering using them more in your game. Thanks for watching. Conditions are one of my favorite parts of 2E's game design, and I hope that I managed to either solidify your view on them being great, or maybe just open your eyes up a little bit about them. Do you think that Paizo should have added any other conditions to the game? I'm kind of curious about that because there are a lot of them, but they don't encompass all situations. Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.